This is question 16 from the revision paper set A as requested. This is fractions question and specifically fraction of the remainder, as you can see stated in the question. Let's go through it. David bought some milk. He used 2/7 of it in the morning and 3/4 of the remainder in the evening. A. What fraction of the milk was used? B. David used 2.1 liters more milk in the evening than in the morning. How many liters of milk did he buy? Okay, so I'll focus on the first part, on all the fractions first. Before you look at the second line, there's decimal coming in, there's liter, there's another unit of measurement coming in. So let me just focus on the fractions first. I've done my first reading. Let's focus on the first part. He has some milk, and then looking at the fraction, like this morning I said earlier, with the fraction, circle it together with what is the phrase that's following, and then you have 3/4 of the remainder. So this is morning and that's evening, right? Okay, so the key question here is what fraction of the milk will use? This is the question. But before we head on to the question, I will do that little annotation that I was explaining to you this morning. Now, the first fraction given in the question was 2/7, and the next fraction given was 3/4. Okay, so first fraction says 2/7 of it. What does it represent? So it represents the milk, all of the milk. So I can understand from here that, okay, there's some milk, this some milk, that's all of the milk, that's the whole. And the whole represents one whole. And if I say 2/7 of it, that means the denominator here means is all the milk, that's the whole. So in other words, the whole will be 7/7, right? Okay, so this is the fraction. So the numerator 2 means it's used in morning. Okay, now the next fraction says 3/4 of the remainder. Okay, so in other words, the denominator here of the remainder, this stands for the remainder. The denominator stands for the remainder. So of the remainder. And then 3 units represents the evening. So this is of the remainder, which is the different denominator from the first fraction that represents the whole. So what you need to find out first is, okay, then what's the remainder? Which in this case, I have the whole. So the first part A will mean the remainder is out of all of the milk, because the key question here is asking for the fraction that was used. You want to use this portion in the evening together with this portion used in the morning, add them together out of all of the milk. So out of the whole of the milk, but they are of different denominators, so you need to figure out what's the remainder first and what's 3/4 of the remainder. So in this case, the remainder is, at first the whole in the morning was one whole, that's 7/7, minus 3/4, minus 2/7 in the morning, I get 5/7. So this is the remainder. So meaning 5/7, 3/4 of the remainder actually is another fraction, 5/7. So if I get to understand this is that if I'm looking at the evening, the portion of all the milk that's used, because I will want now of all the milk. So out of all the milk, I need to look at it, return this portion that is of the evening back to out of all the milk. So that is actually 3/4 out of the remainder of 5/7. Okay, then I do my fraction multiplication. So 15 out of 28 of all the milk. This is of all milk used in the evening. Okay, this is evening. So I must add together with the morning. The morning was 27 plus 1528, that was evening. I will get 27, so 2 times 4, 8, 8, and then you get 23 out of 28. That is the fraction of all the milk that was used morning plus evening. So this is morning and this is evening. Now this is the fraction method to solve it. So I have the remainder, fraction of the remainder, plus the one in the morning. So step by step. Okay? Okay, so alternatively, if you were to draw the model out, it might be something that you can see perhaps slightly easier. So let's say I have this portion of the milk and I cut it into 7 portions. This is the morning. Let me highlight it in blue. Okay, this is morning. And I take the remaining, let me use green, the remaining was this portion. Okay, let me zoom in a bit. So here, this was the remainder. And I take this remainder, I chop it into quarters. And I take 3/4 of it. Oops. That's not a very good drawing. Let me use the highlighter instead. Easier to see. Okay, so this is the portion that I used in the evening. Okay, so this is 3/4 out of the remainder of 5/7. Now if I want to return this 3/4 fraction from 5/7, I have to cut it further. That's what it means by I get each of these remaining pieces. I chop each piece into quarters. So it's like I cut each piece into quarters. Okay, so that's the idea of fraction of a remainder. Okay, so if you can understand that, okay, that will be great. All right. Okay, so to avoid confusing you, let me just erase the lines and the green lines in the middle so you can see the remainder clearly. Okay. Okay. Now back to the questions that's here stated. Now the second part says now that so the first part here, let me write it in the answer. The first part, 23/28 of all the milk that was being used. Okay, then the second part here says here. The second part says use 2.1 liters more milk in the evening than in the morning. How many liters did he buy? Okay, so now that I have the difference more in the evening than morning, so I can say that evening minus morning, the amount that's used is 2.1 liter. So evening, the fraction was this. The morning was 2/7. So do my subtraction, I get 7/28. So in other words, 7 units here will be 2.1 liter. Then I can find 1 unit, that's 0.3 liter, and then all the milk, that's the whole, that'll be 28 units. it will be 0.3 times 28, which will give me the answer using a calculator, 8.4 liters. Okay, do not forget to include the units. Alright, liters in this case. I use fractions to solve and unitary on the second portion. So the answer is 8.4 liters. Question 16. For revision, set A, paper 2, P5.